এবং আপনার সামনে বলবেন পার্টির বক্তব্য। সবারই হয়েছে?
কেন মাইকটা তো ভালো আপনার, ধরবে তো? হ্যাঁ, ইয়েস,
ঠিক, ব্র্যান্ডের ব্যাপার আছে।
ওকে, yes, as Comrade Salim had has explained to you, our Central Committee meeting is going on. It will end tomorrow. But in the meanwhile, we thought it was necessary to raise with you certain important issues that we discussed and which are of very serious concern for the country and the people. The first of it is got to do with the Adani group of companies. As far as the Adani group of companies is concerned, for quite some time, particularly since after 2014, the manner in which these group of companies have actually grown all across the country, all across the sectors, from ports to airports to every single area of infrastructure that you can think of, that has come under the ambit of this group. Now, how is this being financing was a question that has always been raised and has always been of concern for the entire country because it has very serious implications. All of us know even the farm laws that were brought, the 3 farm laws that were brought that Mr. Modi had to withdraw in the face of the historic Kisan agitation and the struggle. These farm laws were also designed to hand over Indian agriculture to Mr. Adani, mainly, and to the other cronies of this government, that is the Mr. Ambani and the other sets of the group of companies that are involved as cronies. Now, the entire policy making in the country is being oriented to benefit these cronies, particularly the Adani group, and that has a very serious implication for our country's economy and future of crores of Indian people. The assets of the country were being handed over to this particular group. And all of us know the close connection between the Prime Minister and this group and the owner of this group. Because if you recollect, many of you must have published those photographs in your papers, which you have, in fact. In fact, I know from Kolkata papers, that Mr. Modi was traveling in the Adani plane. And even after he was elected, the first flight he takes is a private jet of Mr. Adani, which is prominently written there. So the connection is very well known. And the handing over of India's assets, virtually the loot of India's assets, going over to this company, how this was being financed was a question that was always asked. Now that is where we are concerned. Our concern comes in the fact that today, the exposure of LIC's investment in Adani companies is somewhere to the tune of between 74,000 crores and 84,000 crores. Now, this is a huge amount of money. LIC is the place where crores of Indian people park their lifelong savings in terms of insurance policies. Now, with such a big exposure of investments of such a high nature in the Adani group of companies, anything were to happen to these companies like it has happened in the last 2 days, their valuation has dropped by nearly $50 billion. $50 billion, that's what the international estimates say. If that valuation drops, or its value drops in such a way, it's people's money that is invested in these companies that is going to be the loser. That is your LIC policy, my LIC policy, everybody else's LIC policy. What you earn, returns out of that, would be virtually wiped out because of the manner in which this group's companies falling is dropping. So that means it affects not only the group's health, but it affects actually the health of large section of Indian people. Number 2, 40% of the borrowings from nationalized banks in the country to the Adani group of companies is routed through the State Bank of India. Now, State Bank of India is the leading bank of the country. And in that, in all our bank accounts, is again, all the lifetime savings of crores of Indians are parked through their bank accounts. Now, if this is going to get affected with the drop in the value of the Adani group of companies, then the assets or the savings of the crores of Indian people get totally wiped out. Now, the argument saying that no, banks are in good health, so therefore nothing will happen, banks can take this sort of a shock. It's not a question of whether the banks can take this sort of a shock or not. The question is, your account, my account in the SBI, today it gets an interest of 5 to 6%. If this sort of losses were not there, then the interest on my deposits would go up to my bank account, would go up to 10 to 12%. My earnings are being cut because of these sort of losses. So it's not the health of the bank whether it can sustain such a loss or not, but the point is the returns to the people on their lifelong savings, that is being drastically reduced. So these are matters of very serious concern. And the control over Indian economy, all the ports now with Mr. Adani, the Adani Group, all the, airports with them, cement production facilities, factories with them, the basic infrastructure for the economy of the country, it's all being controlled by in one gigantic group of companies led under one group. Now, what has come out in the Hindenburg exposure was the manner in which this was all being financed through a host of offshore companies that were listing or buying shares in the Adani Prime companies, through which the share value was inflated, the quantum of their actual capitalization was inflated. And if all this has been happening, which is essentially fraudulent methods, whether they are fraudulent methods or to what extent they are fraudulent methods and how this has happened, that is a matter that requires to be inquired thoroughly. Our concern as far as the CPIM concerned is people's interests. With the exposure of the LIC to the extent that what I told you, and the State Bank of India to 40% of all their borrowings through the banks, if that is the case, then this is a matter that requires to be very, very thoroughly probed, maintaining and safeguarding people's interests. And India cannot have another fugitive businessmen. We have enough of them who have left the country and gone away. And therefore, the government and the authorities will have to take measures to ensure that all this is properly inquired into. Normally, the regulators are, as far as the LIC and investments and things like that, it should be the SEBI. The SEBI is the regulator. And as far as the banking is concerned and the State Bank of India's exposure to the borrowings, it is the RBI. Now, the SEBI and the RBI, as the regulators, must do their job to inquire into what is happening. But at the same time, there has to be a much larger and a much higher level of inquiry that has to be constituted, because everybody is involved, from the finance ministry, from the foreign ministry, given the fact that much of the borrowing is being taken through foreign bonds in US dollars, the Commerce Ministry, the Industry Ministry, all of them are involved in this entire process. Therefore, a high-level inquiry is absolutely essential, apart from this, the regulators, which should be monitored on a day-to-day basis by the Supreme Court of India. Until then, we got to ensure, till this inquiry is completed and the truth is known, interests of India have to be protected. And if interests of India have to be protected, we also have to know where this huge amount of money that was being made is actually going. If this government will not make the electoral bonds transparent, you tell the country who are the ones who have bought these bonds and who are the ones who have given it to the ruling party. More than 80% of the electoral bonds funding has gone to the ruling BJP. Who are the people who have bought these from the banks and who are the ones who have given it to the BJP? Then you will know, or the country will know, what is the truth, or how the cronies who are gaining from this government and controlling the Indian economy, how they're also feeding the ruling party through what we've always said, legalized political corruption. So these are matters of very, very serious concern. So CPIM now today demands that there should be, apart from the regulators going to the normal course of inquiry, a high-level inquiry constituted by the Government of India, because in today's conditions, with the parliament being what it is, a joint parliamentary committee will not be of much use, and when it has not produced anything so far during the last 7-8 years of this Modi government. So in this situation, a high-powered committee involving all the concerned ministries, monitored by the Supreme Court, is what has to be done immediately to save our economy, save the lives of our people. Unemployment today is at the highest of levels. Our inflation is going rampant despite the RBI saying that it is coming under control, is slightly falling. World calls us the hunger levels in our country as being very serious. The Modi government rubbishes the global indices, but the fact that Modi government has announced and the Prime Minister himself has announced that for the whole year 2023, 5 kg of free food grains will be given to how many people? 81.35 crores of people. That is how much? 2/3 of India. 2/3 of India, according to the Prime Minister of India, cannot survive without this free 5 kg a month. What is that an admission except hunger? If 81.35 crores of Indian people cannot survive without the free food grains, it is clear-cut admission that Indians are hungry. I mean, there is very, very serious hunger situation in the country. High level of unemployment, high level of hunger, rising inflation, and therefore more people being pushed into poverty. What does the Oxfam report show you? The highest number of people pushed into poverty last year in the world, nearly 28 crores of people were from India. This is what the latest Oxfam report has shown. And in this sort of a situation, what is happening with the Adani Group is not something that is acceptable, permissible, and that is not desirable for a country like India. We have to save our economy, our assets, our resources from being looted. And therefore, this sort of an inquiry and answerability to the people is absolutely essential. So that is what the first point that I would like to make. As far as this entire issue is concerned, I know, I mean, I'm not blaming you people, but many of you will have also, because Mr. Adani's economic hold and interests cover a lot of areas, not only ports and airports, but also the media. So we understand the constraints in which you all operate. But nevertheless, for the interests of India and the Indian people, we'd like you to at least understand the gravity of the situation. And also to, to ensure that together we save our own country's assets and our own country's people from further ruination. So this is what we would demand of the government, and we hope that in the coming parliament session, which is starting day after, tomorrow, that this would be taken up, and before this budget session ends, since there's going to be a long session sometime in April, Before this budget session ends, this Supreme Court monitored inquiry must come out with its findings, place it before the Parliament and the country so that appropriate decisions can be taken. So this time-bound thing during the course of the Parliament to come up with the report that needs to be undertaken. Okay, you want to add anything? Now, as far as the other issues are concerned, as I said, we are discussing these matters involved. But the Tripura elections that are coming here, the CPIM has taken this very clear-cut position that the attacks on democracy, which are deepening all over the country in all spheres, in Tripura particularly, any question of holding a free and fair election cannot come unless democratic rights there are safeguarded reasonably, and that requires all forces who believe in the Indian Constitution and who believe in democracy to come together to ensure that the reign of terror and the sort of a political situation of oppression that has been created with the BJP state government, that is removed. That is, all secular democratic forces, we have appealed to them to come together to make sure the defeat of the BJP in Tripura, so that the rule of law and the Indian Constitution and democracy can be preserved. So that's why the CPIM for the first time has come into an understanding, electoral understanding with other forces. The discussions are on till tomorrow will be the last date for nominations, and second will be the last date for withdrawals. So by the second, we think some sort of a seat adjustment program will happen with the Congress, and with also we appeal to the other secular democratic forces like the Tripura Motha and the other ones, so that we can all come together to ensure that the BJP government is removed from office so that democracy, rule of law, and the constitution can be safeguarded there in that state. And the interest that is being shown by the other northeastern BJP ruled states, particularly from Assam in Tripura, is also ominous, because the whole of the northeast is sought to be destabilized. After the destabilization of J&K, now has come to the northeast. And why I say destabilization of the J&K, I don't know, most of you know Sonam Wangchuk, that is
Motivator.
of America and Three Idiots. You know, now he is under house arrest from the 26th of January. And he's now put out a video saying that he was talking of safeguarding the Ladakh's unique attributes and demanding Schedule 6 be implemented, Constitution Schedule 6, be implemented for the Ladakh Union Territory, so that its interests, its language, its culture, and particularly its physical attributes, which are the severe attack from climate change devastation, they can be protected. It called for a 5-day long peaceful protest actions of dharnas all across Ladakh. Many people have started participating, but he was confined in his own institute, and he's been detained there 5 days. What does Mr. Sonam Wangchuk pose a threat of security to the country? No, but this is the manner in which democracy is being butchered in our country. So after what has been done to the J&K and now to the northeast that is happening, this is something that is very serious. Therefore, Tripura elections, this is what the CPIM has decided. So we are not contesting for the first time in Tripura all the 60 seats, and there is seat adjustments that is taking place with the Congress and other secular democratic forces in the state. Now, all over the country, what we see today is very severe attacks on all the principles, all the fundamental pillars of our constitution. Federalism and the role of the governors. I don't know, your governor has been elevated as Vice President of India, so now you have a new governor. I don't know what is the... equation that you have with the new governor, but all across in every single non-BJP state, the governor is playing the role of actually advancing the political agenda of the ruling party at the center. We had the experience of the governor in Kerala. Tamil Nadu is feeling the experience in what the governor is doing. Maharashtra has seen that. Telangana has got its own series of complaints. Every single lieutenant governor, whether it is from Delhi, Lakshadweep, Andaman Nicobar, Pondicherry, every one of them are acting actually as as agents advancing the political agenda of the ruling BJP. Now, this way, the entire constitutional edifice of our country is under severe assault. Federalism, democracy, the question of basic democratic rights and civil liberties, all these things and the gross misuse of UAPA, etc., they continue to be. The investigating officer tells the Elgar Parishad in the inquiry that the Elgar Parishad was nowhere connected with the violence of what Bhima Koregaon. That it was that occurred on that particular day that year. But for no more than 3 years, they are under UAPA. No charge sheets filed yet. That is the state of attacks that we are facing today. So anyway, the Central Committee is going to appeal in the light of this, asking all other secular forces to come together to ensure that the BJP is removed from office at the center and the forthcoming 2024 elections, so that our constitution, democracy, and people's democratic rights and civil liberties can be safeguarded and preserved. So these are the issues I wanted to flag today. Tomorrow, then, after the meeting, then we'll issue a more detailed.
I don't think you have any question. Everything explained.
सतरम जी, यहाँ पे जो गवर्नर का रोल देखा गया कि वो आते ही 26 जनवरी को वो उसने हाथे खोड़ी इस प्रोग्राम में पार्टिसिपेट किया और उसके बाद दिल्ली जाना पड़ा, जिसको लेके बीजेपी ने ये बवाल खड़ा किया कि वो एक्चुअली तृणमूल का होके काम कर रहा है, तो फिर उसका रोल को लेके आपका कोई
पता नहीं यार, ये तो लोग बताएंगे कि मतलब ये क्या चीज है, वो इनसे पूछिए। अगर बीजेपी आरोप उठा रही है तो उसके पीछे मतलब कुछ सोचना पड़ेगा कि मतलब मतलब क्या, क्यों उठा रही है?
हाथे खोड़ी की गलाয় দড়ি পড়ে বয়ে যাবে।
সুতরাং কি আপনি বললেন যে ত্রিপুরার ক্ষেত্রে মানে কংগ্রেসকে বা অন্য কাউকে অ্যালায়েন্সের জন্য বলছেন, সেক্ষেত্রে পশ্চিমবঙ্গে পঞ্চায়েত ইলেকশন নিয়ে কি ভাবছেন কি যে কংগ্রেস বা অন্য কারোর সঙ্গে জড়িত হবে?
পশ্চিমবঙ্গে পঞ্চায়েত ইলেকশন হবে কি? না না, আপনার যদি কনফিডেন্ট আছে তো বলুন, তো হবে তো। হ্যাঁ, যদি হবে তো তখন বললো আমার ট্যাকটিক্স কি হবে।
না, অভিষেক বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায় তো বলছেন যে বিরোধীদের হয়ে উনি বিরোধীরা মনোনয়ন দিতে না পারলে উনি দাঁড়িয়ে থেকে মনোনয়ন দেওয়ার ব্যবস্থা করে দেবেন।
কি বললো?
Has to tell about whom you are talking about. He's not that famous, na? You tell that someone.
ममता बनर्जी का जो भतीजा जा रहा है, उसने कहा कि अगर अपोजिशन पार्टी यहाँ पे नॉमिनेशन नहीं दे पाए, सबमिट नहीं दे पाए, तो फिर वो खुद खड़ा होके नॉमिनेशन सबमिट करने का अरेंजमेंट कर देगा।
तो घोषणा तो करे ना, इलेक्शन कब हो रहा है?
पिछले बार पंचायत चुनाव में
हुआ क्या? घोषणा हुआ क्या?
उनके लोग पुलिस के साथ उनके गुंडे, खासकर जो न्यू तृणमूल बता रहे हो, प्रिवेंट किया लोगों को। बंगाल एक ही स्टेट है पूरे देश में, और त्रिपुरा जहां बीजेपी का राज है, कि नॉमिनेशन जमा देते वक्त वो हंगामा करते हैं और खुद कह रहे हैं बेड़ाल बोलছে মাছ ছবো না, কাশি যাবো।
अच्छा ठीक है, যেটা আমি বললাম ওটাই তো হচ্ছে। তো আডানির উপর কিছু প্রশ্ন আছে? ওটা তো হবে না, তো আদানির উপরে প্রশ্ন হবে না। তো তুমি গভর্নর কি করছে, ও কি করছে, এটা কি হচ্ছে? हाँ,
खुचरो,
अरे देश लूटा जा रहा है, उसके बारे में कुछ पूछना है तो पूछिए ना। अब त्रिपुरा
त्रिपुरा है सर।
हाँ,
বলছেন সেখানে যেমনটা খবর যে আসন সমঝোতার ক্ষেত্রে আপনাদের জেতার সিটের আগে সেখানে কংগ্রেস প্রার্থী ঘোষণা করেছে, সেক্ষেত্রে জোটের কি হবে বা এই নিয়ে কি কোনো
হবে, ওটা কথা হচ্ছে। এখানে বললাম তো আপনাকে কি কালকে হচ্ছে লাস্ট ডেট নমিনেশন, 2 তারিখে হচ্ছে উইথড্রয়াল। ওদের আগে আমি ভাবছিলাম, আমরা কনফিডেন্ট ওটা হয়ে যাবে, সাম আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ডিং উইল বি অ্যারাইভড এট। কেন কি সবাই ডিটারমিন্ড আজকে ওখানে যদি গণতন্ত্রকে প্রস্তাবিত রাখতে হবে অ্যান্ড আওয়ার কনস্টিটিউশন অফ ইন্ডিয়াকে সেফগার্ড করতে হবে ত্রিপুরাতে, তো বিজেপিকে গভর্নমেন্ট থেকে সরাতে হবে ত্রিপুরাতে।
ত্রিপুরাতে কংগ্রেসের সঙ্গে জোটের প্রয়োজনীয়তা হলো কেন? তার কারণ এখন আমাদের রাজ্যে যখন কংগ্রেসের সঙ্গে জোট নিয়ে কথা হয়েছিল, রাজনৈতিক বিষয় নিয়ে আলোচনা হয়েছিল যে কংগ্রেসের সঙ্গে কেন জোট প্রশ্ন উঠেছিল।
What is the necessity for this seat adjustment in Tripura? Because when in Bengal it was done, so there are so many questions raised.
Well, I think the necessity is to ensure that the rule of law and the Constitution of India continue to prevail in Tripura. Today, at the moment, they do not. There is no democracy, there is no democratic rights, there is no rule of law. In order to restore that, it is necessary that all democratic, secular-minded people come together to make sure that BJP does not control the government in Tripura, because using this control over the government, they are disabusing the whole system. That is the need.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
বলছিলেন যে কোথাও একটা অর্থনৈতিক বিপর্যয়, ফিনান্সিয়াল ক্রাইসিসের মধ্যে দিয়ে ঘুরতে হচ্ছে, সেই জায়গায় দাঁড়িয়ে আপনারা কি ডিমান্ড করবেন?
Concrete demand on the budgetization because of this financial crisis. In the midst of that, during budgetization, what you are going to demand on economic front? What's your demand?
First of all, our demand would be, if you know, down first on the economic front, we want, instead of selling India's assets, selling India's infrastructure, the government must increase its public investments to build our infrastructure, which will generate jobs, which is what our youth require today. So hike public investments in building infrastructure to generate jobs. That job generation will generate domestic demand because people start spending the wages, and then your closed MSMEs, etc., will start reviving. For economic revival, that is essential. Hike public investments, number one. Number two, for people's welfare, restore your 5 kg of subsidized food grains along with 5 kg of free food grains. PMGKY and the Food Security Act have both been merged together. The subsidized 5 kg has been eliminated now by the Modi government. You restore that. Otherwise, this problem of hunger that we were talking about, that'll worsen. Third, increase your allocations for REGA to at least, very substantially, to at least 2 lakh crores a year with higher wages, because that is the only source of employment today in the country. There's no other employment. Industrial output is declining. Manufacture is declining even faster. So jobs are being lost. There's a large-scale layoffs that are happening all over the place. So that is why increase allocations for REGA. Impose a wealth tax and an inheritance tax. Obscene levels of inequality. 1% of India owning 40.5% of the newly generated wealth of the country in the last 2 years. 50% of India has access to 3%. 1% of India has access to 40.5%. That is the level of inequality. Probably the worst anywhere in any country in the world. So in that, there you impose a wealth tax, you impose an inheritance tax. And then finally withdraw your GST on all food items and on all essential commodities and medicines and life-saving medicines. All essential commodities, just withdraw GST. These are the 6 basic demands that we want to involve. So I think this is what has to be done immediately. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.